Hey guys, welcome to Alex Goes Coconuts. So today I'm going to go over my top tips when traveling with children. I actually have another video on what to pack in a carry-on for your children. I'll put a link to that video right up here and in the description box down below. But for today, I just wanted to go over general tips to help you have a better trip when you're traveling with your children. So tip number one is do whatever it takes to keep your child happy and entertained throughout the flight. So I know a lot of parents have different rules, like some parents don't allow their children TV, some people don't allow junk food in the house, and that's fine at home, but I think when you're flying, if you know that those things are going to distract your child, then bring them on the plane with you. Make sure you have those things available to you so that if your kid starts getting antsy, you have those tools to pull out during the flight. Tip number two is to not pack too much stuff when you're taking a flight with a child. Try to just bring what you need, because everything that you're bringing extra, you're just gonna have to carry that stuff. Your backpacks and your luggage are going to get heavier and more cumbersome. So really try to limit what you're bringing. Be mindful about the things you're bringing. Really think, is this going to be useful during the flight? And if it's not, then get rid of it. All right, tip number three is to leave the toys at home. I know parents gravitate towards toys to distract their children, but on a plane, toys take up a lot of space. They usually don't keep children's attention very long. You know, a child will play with a toy for about 2-3 minutes and then he'll get bored with it and set it aside. Toys can get lost really easily too between the seats. Instead, I would try to bring activity books such as these, Doodle Books, coloring books, sticker books. Any kind of activity book that you can do with your child will be a better tool to distract your child than a toy. I also suggest some kind of digital entertainment, which is a lot easier to pack on a plane. It saves so much room. You can download movies, download video games, download books onto an iPad or a phone, and it will entertain your kids a lot longer than if you would bring a toy on the plane. Tip number four is if you're traveling with a young child, like a toddler or a baby, I would definitely bring an umbrella stroller. Usually you can bring that umbrella stroller all the way to the gate and they check it into the plane for you. And it's definitely something you're going to be able to use once you arrive at your destination. Tip number five is if you are traveling with a baby or a toddler, you might want to consider bringing a car seat onto the plane, especially if you're planning on renting a car once you arrive at your destination. A car seat is really the safest way for your child to fly on a plane. You can secure him in the seat a lot better than if you were holding him in your arms. It also provides a more comfortable place for your child to sit, so you don't have to hold your child the whole time that you're flying in that plane. Just make sure that it's an FAA approved car seat, because if not, you won't be able to bring it onto the plane. And I would definitely check with the airline that you're flying with to make sure that the car seat is going to fit in the seat of the airplane. Sometimes the car seats are way too big for those seats, and you don't want to be struggling with that the day that you're flying. Tip number six is to try to pick your seating arrangements ahead of time, especially when traveling with kids. Airlines like to stick families all the way to the back of the plane near the bathrooms. The back of the plane is where there's the most noise from the engine, and usually it doesn't smell as nice back there, and you also have a lot of people that go in and out of those bathrooms, so you always have people standing next to you in the aisle. So picking your seats, higher up in the plane, like closer to the front, is definitely going to be more comfortable for you and your family. Another reason why you want to, pick your seats ahead of time is to try to compartmentalize your kids as much as possible. So if I'm flying alone with the kids, I'll usually try to pick a window seat, and I'll put the kid next to the window and myself closer to the aisle so that I can contain my children in that space. If I'm flying with my husband, I'll usually put the kids right in between us to try to control them as much as possible. Tip number 7 is to separate your kids. So if you have siblings, I highly suggest you do not let them sit together. I made the mistake on my last flight. My kids are older, so I thought they can handle it, but they just ended up fighting the whole time that they were sitting together. My younger son kept wanting to sleep on his brother, and he wanted nothing to do with that, so they kept fighting about it. They also fought for food and other stuff. So if you have children and you're flying with your partner, try to separate, put one kid with one parent and the other kid with another parent. This will make for a much more pleasant flight. All right, so tip number 8 is try to dress your children as comfortable as possible. So when you're taking a flight, you definitely don't want anything too tight or uncomfortable on the child. So I usually forego like jeans or tight pants. I usually opt more for like track pants or even pajamas if it's an overnight flight. Also, you want to make sure that your child is wearing layers so that if he gets hot, he can take off things very easily, or if he gets cold, he can put that stuff back on. Tip number 9 is if you have older children, definitely make them carry their own carry-on onto the plane. That way they can get whatever they need during the flight themselves. Now, if you have a child that's younger than 7 years old, I definitely would forget that idea and just carry everything the child needs in your own backpack or bag. Usually younger children, they get all excited about carrying a backpack at first, and then within 20 minutes at the airport, they just don't want to carry that bag anymore. And what ends up happening is that the parent has extra bags to carry. So you don't want that happening. I just say if your child's way too young, just carry everything he'll need during the flight in your own bag. Tip number 10 is choose your carry-on bag very carefully. So when I'm flying with kids, I know these roll-on suitcases are really popular and they're really cute too. So a lot of parents think it's a great idea to give their child a roll-on suitcase like this. And these are fine if you're packing your kids' clothes or toiletries for the trip. But most of the time, these kind of suitcases have to be put in the overhead bin, and you don't want to access what you need for the flight in these kind of suitcases. It's not the most practical thing to grab things out of. You have to pull it out, unzip it each time you want to access it. They just don't make great carry-on bags. Instead, backpacks are easy to access. They have 1 or 2 zippers, and the child will struggle a lot less to get stuff out of this bag than a rolling suitcase. And you know, they make really great backpacks these days. This one actually has wheels and it has a little handle, so they can roll these around the airport really easily. So definitely opt for a backpack instead of a rolling suitcase. Tip number 11 is to bring food for your child to eat during the flight. Don't rely on airplane food. First of all, a lot of flights don't even offer food during the flight. Some of them do offer, cold meals like sandwiches and little snacks. But the problem with that is that if there's turbulence or anything, they can, stop the food service altogether, and you don't want your child to be hungry during the flight. It's just going to make a cranky child, and that's the last thing you want to deal with. And try to stick to the child's schedule. So if you know that your child eats lunch at noon and your flight is smack in the middle of that, then definitely bring a lunch for your kid to eat onto the plane. Another thing I use food for sometimes is as a distraction. So, I'll bring some special treats like some gummies or some chips or stuff like that. And if the kid is starting to be a little antsy or starting to act up, I usually pull out these special treats and I use it as bribery. I'm like, okay, let's calm down, sit on your chair, and mommy will give you a little bag of gummies. And usually that seems to work really well. So food can be used as a reward system for good behavior. Now, quick note, if you are traveling internationally, you won't be able to bring fresh fruits or vegetables or meats or dairy into that country. So you can bring it onto the plane. As long as you eat it on the plane, it's fine. But definitely throw it out before you exit the plane because you don't want any trouble at customs. Tip number 12 is to bring a sippy cup or a refillable water bottle for your child. So when you're passing security, you won't be able to bring any liquids with you unless it's 3 ounces or less. So I usually just bring an empty sippy cup or an empty water bottle, and then once I pass security, I'll fill it up at a water fountain, or I'll buy a bottle of juice or something and fill up that sippy cup. But you definitely want your child to drink out of something with a straw or something that won't spill all over them. Usually when they serve drinks in the plane, they give you like an open cup, which is a total disaster for most children. You know that if they have an open cup like that, it'll just end up all over themselves. So I usually, take those drinks and pour it into the sippy cup or the refillable water bottle, and that way I can ensure a spill-free flight. Tip number 13 is do not rely on the entertainment system of the airplane to entertain your kids. Oftentimes on smaller flights, the entertainment system is not even available. You gotta usually rent an iPad from the airline. Also, sometimes the entertainment systems don't work, so you definitely don't want to have to deal with that during the flight. So I recommend downloading a whole bunch of shows or movies onto a tablet or a phone, and make sure that you have something that your child likes to watch. And this is also great if you're waiting for your flight or your flight is delayed. This is something that's gonna occupy your children. Tip number 14 is to bring something to help your child deal with air pressure. Air pressure in a plane is a really big deal for children just because they have such small sinus cavities, and often if you don't have something for your child to suck on or chew on during takeoff and landing, your child can really experience some really bad ear pain. So usually with a really young baby, you can bottle feed the baby when you're taking off, and when you're landing, that'll help pop the ears open. If you have an older child, you can give him a lollipop to suck on, or make him drink out of his water bottle. And if you have an old enough child to chew on gum, gum is a really great way to pop open those ears and make sure that you don't feel pain when you're landing. Now, if you want to take that even a step further, what I usually do before my child takes the flight, I'll usually use a saline nose spray to clear up his sinuses before the flight. That will really help prevent that ear pain. Now, if you're taking a really long flight, definitely bring that nasal spray with you onto the flight so you can give it to the child halfway through the flight. Now that brings me to tip number 15. Make sure that you have medication on hand for your child in case he starts feeling unwell during the flight. So I usually like to travel with children's Tylenol or children's Advil in case he has a headache or fever. I usually also travel with anti-nausea medication. If your child has allergies, definitely travel with allergy medication. If your child has food allergies, definitely bring your epinephrine needles. So just make sure that you have everything you'll need on that flight in case the child starts feeling ill. And if your child is taking prescription medication, definitely also bring that on your carry-on. Just make sure that it's in the original packaging and that it has your child's name on it with the doctor that prescribed it to him. Tip number 16 is to make sure that you bring something to cover your child with during the flight. It can get really, really cold in that plane, especially when you reach high altitudes. And even if you're traveling during the summer months, you want something to be able to cover up your child with. I usually like to travel with a little blanket or a jacket just in case my child does get cold during the flight. Tip number 17 is to bring a change of clothes for your child. Even if you're traveling with an older child, it's better if you have a change of clothes. In case he spills something on himself, you don't want him to be cold during the flight. I always bring an extra pair of underwear, an extra t-shirt, an extra bottom for him to change into in case an accident does happen. Tip number 18 is to bring a bunch of resealable plastic bags like this. I can't tell you how useful these are when you're traveling with children. You can use this for soiled clothes. You can use this if your child's going to be sick on the plane. You can pull this out really quickly and use it as a barf bag. This can also be used to accumulate all the garbage. When I'm traveling with my kids, they eat snacks and all kinds of stuff, and they give me all the wrappers and the junk that they accumulate. So I always don't know where to put all this stuff. So a little Ziplock like this, you can put all your garbage in it, And when the air stewardess passes, you can just throw it all out at once, and it just makes it so much easier. Tip number 19 is a little controversial. I hope I don't get full of backlash for this, but do not medicate your child to keep him calm during the flight. I know some parents who do this, and I do not suggest it, not because I'm judging you, but just because you don't know how your child's gonna react to that medication. My child once had an allergic reaction before taking a flight, and I had to give him Benadryl, and it was a disaster. He cried that whole plane ride because he got super cranky. Yes, he was sleepy, but he wasn't sleeping. He was crying the whole time. So unless your child really needs it, do not medicate that child. You just don't know how your child's gonna react, and it's just a bad idea. Giving medication to your child for nothing is just never a great idea. Tip number 20 is to try to stick to your child's routine as much as possible. So, try to feed your child at the times that he's used to eating. Try to make your child fall asleep at the times that he's used to falling asleep. So if you're taking an afternoon flight and you know that he's used to eating at noon, try to feed him at noon. If you're taking an overnight flight and he's used to going to bed at 8 o'clock, usually just before he's ready to go to bed, I'll usually pull out the little stuffed animal he sleeps with. I'll usually put on some soothing music or a soothing show so that he starts getting sleepy around the times that he goes to sleep. Tip number 21 is to bring over-the-head earphones for your child. Now, there's a lot of different sized earphones. They even make some for young children that have a lower volume on it to not damage their ears. I'll put a link to those in the description box down below, but you definitely want something that's comfortable for the child to wear, that's well suited for his or her head. Also, over-the-ear headphones will block out noise a lot better, and some kids can't stand wearing earbuds. So this is definitely something you're gonna have to bring on the plane with you. You definitely want earphones of some kind, because I know sometimes parents forget this and they're playing their iPad or their phones pretty loud on that plane, and it just bothers other passengers. So these are great even for adults. Make sure you have a pair of over-the-head earphones, and it'll just make the flight much more enjoyable for yourself, but also much more enjoyable for the passengers that are traveling with you. All right, tip number 22 is to be prepared to entertain your child the whole flight. So when you're traveling with children, that is just something you're gonna have to be mentally prepared for. Don't, think that you're gonna go onto that plane and just put, an iPad and a pair of earphones on your kids and it's gonna go super well the whole way. It can. Some children can watch, several movies in a row and they'll just be quiet the whole flight. But sometimes it doesn't work like that. Sometimes your child gets bored of watching a movie or TV, or gets bored of playing a video game, and you definitely want something to do with him to entertain that child. So your main goal is to keep your child calm and distracted the whole flight so that he's good on that flight, and often that will require some effort on your part. A child can do an activity book by himself, but most of the time, if you're doing that activity book with him, he'll be so much more interested and it'll keep his attention a lot longer. So I say definitely be prepared to play with your child or entertain your child or do an activity with him. So if you're mentally prepared for it, you're just gonna have a much better flight. All right guys, so those are my tips when traveling with children. I hope this video helped you plan a better trip. Let me know in the comments below if you have any tricks that I haven't mentioned in this video. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel to see more videos like this one. Thanks for watching guys. Have a great day. Bye.